You might say, well, that person needs to stop because they have a problem. What we're saying across this broad is maybe not necessarily that you have a problem or you don't have a problem. The question is alcohol causing you problems?
Whenever I put up content relating to alcohol, I always get messages from younger people being like, oh, well, you either must have a problem or whatnot.
Environment is really, really key.
When you break away to that point, then you almost have the confidence to not go back.
When you look at the advertising, they've started to shift towards alcohol-free versions.
Alcohol is holding you back and you don't even realize it. Ruari is here to break down exactly what happens when you drink alcohol and the impact it's having on your body, your brain, your performance, and your business. He's the founder of 1 Year No Beer, helping people control their alcohol consumption and driving it to zero. He's transformed the lives of entrepreneurs, high achievers to live a better life and achieve more through an alcohol-free lifestyle. This podcast is a deep dive into the science, the theory, the effects, and the impact of alcohol on your body. And at the end of this podcast, you could have a completely different perspective. Before we start this podcast, I have one little favor to ask you. Can you please hit the subscribe button down below so we can help more people every single week? Thank you. Let's kick off. Well, man, I really appreciate this. I've been actually buzzing for this all week, man. Super excited for this. And where I want to start is one of your stats. So 84% of people don't want to quit alcohol. Why do you think that is?
Okay, 94% of people don't want to quit alcohol. It's interesting because this comes from a piece of research we did. Still ongoing. I think now nearly 40,000 people around the world have taken this. And in that, we asked the question, what would you like your relationship with alcohol to look like? And of that, 6% of people want to stop drinking. 94% would like some various different answers. I don't know what to do, but I need to do something. I would like to be able to drink less. I would like to be able to take it or leave it. But ultimately, the vast majority of people don't want to stop drinking. You asked me, why do I think that is? Well, because we live in the world we live in. I mean, it's absolutely saturated in alcohol. There are so many things that has happened over, the last 100 years with alcohol. That means that, if you look at what alcohol was, it was really a social elixir. The community would get together into the pub and this would be the element of connection. And then you brought the big alcohol in and they started realizing that what they could do is they could market it to different areas of life. So it became attached to celebration, commiseration, relaxation, mummy wine time, winding down, switching off at the end of the day, being cool, being sexy, all of those things. And that happened over decades and decades. And then society really gathers the momentum with that, picks that up and runs with it. And so it is ingrained in society that, in most cultures, Ireland, Scotland, pretty heavy drinking cultures, whether you're a man or not is decided on how much and how quickly you can drink, I remember standing with a group of guys and they were talking about, the cricket competition this year. And they were like, well, we really want to win this year. We really, really got to win this year. And one of the guys was like, well, why don't we invite Paul? He's the best player by far. And the guys were like, yeah, we should. And then one guy was like, but yeah, he doesn't drink. And then everyone like, no, we can't invite Paul. So they'd rather lose the cricket competition than they would have somebody who doesn't drink. And so this has become, it becomes this element. Because we're around that through our younger years, we're very impressionable when we're in our nappies. We're watching parents celebrate, commiserate, congratulate with alcohol. We're watching every moment. Every moment is seeded by alcohol. That it becomes very ingrained in us, and we then repeatedly do it. Which is why changing a relationship with it is difficult. Now, when we say no one really wants to stop drinking, there's obviously the people who find out that they've got significant issues. So the alcohol keeps causing significant problems. You might say that once you become, you might use the word alcoholic. I don't use that word. In fact, in the scientific community, we don't use that word. We talk about alcohol use disorder. And so you might say, well, that person needs to stop because they have a problem. But similarly, what we're saying across this broad is maybe not necessarily that you have a problem or you don't have a problem. The question is alcohol causing you problems, right? Is when you drinking, is it causing issues? Are there some blackouts that you don't remember what happened last night? And does that worry you? Does that concern you that you didn't know how you got home or you didn't know how you got to bed? What about, did you step into your car? Well, you do realize that if you get caught, or worse, if somebody steps out in front of you after a few drinks, that's prison time, right? That's rolling a dice. But so then what about, what about how you're showing up at work? Whether you run your own business like we do, don't know why we're all nuts, but anyway, let's say you run your own business. You have to be nuts to run your own business. Let's say you run your own business. And I say to people all the time, if you absolutely smashing it out of the park, like if you put together all the best bits of yourself over the last few decades when you were 100% in all areas, if that's you at 100%, what percentage of you is showing up at work on Monday after drinking at the weekend? And is that percentage, 80%? Is it 50%? Is it 30%? Are you moving meetings around? Are you avoiding situations? Do you cancel some stuff? Do you just not bother? Do you delay it? Do you say, can't be bothered to exercise today? All of those things. Well, then, yeah, alcohol is causing problems. Alcohol is costing you money. You're leaving cash on the table. It's costing you your health. It's costing your mental health. So, very long-winded answer coming back into here is that I think that because of alcohol so ingrained in society, I think the vast majority of people would just like to be able to drink a bit less. And I think that comes in two parts. One, I'd like to not rely on it so much, maybe taking the edge off at the end of the day, or maybe to go out socially and just have one or two and call it a day. And similarly with the binge element, I'd rather that once I start, I don't go on to absolute craziness and be the one calling shots and dancing half naked on a table, which was usually me. So
100%. And man, I was the exact same as you, right? We have very similar early 20s. And what I think is very interesting here, my mind is firing, and we're going to jump around a lot, right? Is the fact that people presume you have to have a problem, or you must have had a really big problem to quit alcohol. That's when you should quit, right? It's like people presume you need to be the drunk at the pub watching the cricket or watching the rugby or watching the football, and the guy at the bottom of the bar, he's the one with the problem. But for me, the way I look at it is like, you didn't achieve full potential. So let me just walk through the scenario. So I was working in investment banking in London. I was in Canary Wharf. I wasn't a broker, I tell you that much, but I wasn't far from it. And I remember remember being slightly, not, I wouldn't say depressed, but down because I wasn't living up to my full potential. I was partying a lot. I was doing Thursdays and Fridays and Saturdays out. And then that made me be very anxious as a result. And then it wasn't until many years later, when I got to 25, 26, where I realized, wait, what the fuck just happened? The past 4 years, I thought I'd be hitting, multi six figures a year, or coming up to making even $1 million a year at like this age, because I'm, there are goals I want to hit to, and I wasn't. And it wasn't like I was doing anything wrong. It's just the fact that I wasn't getting the most out of what I could do. So, and just for context, what happened was I moved to Singapore. I was working for a tech company in Singapore, and because alcohol is super fucking expensive in Singapore, I didn't drink. And then I went 1 month, I went 3 months, I went 6 months, and it wasn't will I drink again, it's why would I drink again? Because I was growing my podcast, growing my business, getting fitter, getting healthier, better relationships with my girlfriend, better relationships even with my dogs, genuinely, just better relationships with people in general. And I thought that's very interesting. So now whenever I put up content relating to alcohol, I always get messages from younger people being like, oh, well, you either must have had a problem or whatnot. But then the other side is a lot of messages that I get, and we can go through this and diagnose it, is most men message me, 18, 21, saying, hey, I really want to get fit. I really want to build my first business, but I can't because of my friends pulling me back in. And it actually breaks my heart, man. People are like, oh, I wish I could do something, but I keep getting pulled down into the pub. So like, what advice do you have for someone there that's being restricted by their social circle and they're being nearly forced to drink and move away from their goals?
Yeah. Well, I mean, this is the really important thing. I mean, environment is absolutely key to changing behavior. Most people are in that environment where it's just completely ingrained. I was from the Isle of Mull. It's just, that's what you do. Everyone drinks. And West Coast of Scotland. Yeah, exactly. So environment is really, really key. And if you look at the let's just explain the behavioral economics here so that you understand. There's a piece of behavior research where they take a teacher and they take a group of kids. Now, let's say there's 30 kids there. 29 are actors and one is the child who's in the study, if you like. And the teacher is presenting a question. Which one of these lines is the longest? And it's very obviously A. It is a very, very long line. B is shorter. D is much shorter. C and D is very, very short. Okay. And then it goes through the people answering the question. The kids answer the question. First kid, I think it's D, the wrong answer. I think it's D. I think it's C. So they all say the wrong answer. When it gets round to the kid who is not an actor, the kid is like, I think it's D. Every single time, the kid will say the wrong answer. Every time, right? Because of that societal peer pressure. This is how we behave as human beings. We follow the way our community is behaving. Now, what happens is if you change that dynamic and one person in that group expresses doubt. So they say, well, I think it could be A, which is the right one, but I'm going to go for D because everybody else is. Then every single time, the child who's not an actor will go for the correct answer. It is A. So what we need is an expression of doubt. We don't need to change our entire environment. So what does that mean for people who are surrounded by drinkers? There's drinkers all around you, right? Well, first of all, I would say, if you're trying to build a business and everyone around you is into fishing or farming and drinking every single, 4 nights a week and or whatever it is, right? They're in industries or whatever, that kind of behavior, move.
100%. Fucking 100%.
Move. Go to somewhere where you can network with other entrepreneurs and you can be around with the sum of the 5 people you spend the most time with. Do you want to be like them or do you want to build a successful business? Okay, dramatic. If you can't do that, let's just say you can't move right now, then join an online program where you're going to spend your evenings, maybe it's one of your communities or another community where you're going to spend your evenings networking with guys who are building their businesses. And that's your expression of doubt. That is your sense of belonging. Again, just a little description in here so you understand how powerful this is. As human beings, right, we are constantly evaluating almost every single situation based on our status in society. Okay. Now, depending on where your mental health is and how you are in the world and how weathered you've been and everything else, the vast majority of us do not want to do things that lower our status. Okay. So we'll actively avoid those things. Instead, we're trying to do things that either maintain or increase our status. Guess what not drinking is in society? It's absolutely frowned upon. It's looked as this weakness. Like you had a problem, you're weak, you're not one of the guys, blah, 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 blah. So that's why there's so much resistance to do it. And inside again is this element of tribalism, right? So our tribe, the one that we've been grown up with, the one that we've been around, everyone that we've been associating with all our life, drinks alcohol, is indoctrinated with alcohol, and believes that alcohol is the best thing since sliced bread. I mean, if we changed it to, some kind of other painful behavior, like literally chaining a studded chain around your chest so it bleeds. What's that thing in Catholic? You put it around the leg so that you're cutting into yourself, right? And everyone's like, this is amazing. It helps me build stress. And you're like, okay, well, I'm just going to keep going on with that and keep bleeding until one day you're like, I don't think that's helping me. I'm going to listen to my own self-doubt here, which is that's fine for you guys that you want to go and do that all the time. But in the back of my brain, my heart, my soul, my subconscious is saying to me, you know what, alcohol's holding you back. So then you go to the tribe and say, hey, I'm thinking about not drinking. Well, you may as well tell the tribe that you're leaving. Guess what happens when somebody tries to leave the tribe? The tribe goes, come back. Don't go. You'll get eaten by lions. Don't be crazy. Stay here. So they're like, come on, just have a drink. Go on. Mrs. Doubtfire. No, Mrs. Watson. You will. Go on.
Man, it's been like 10 years since I saw that.
What's her name? Mrs. Doyle. Mrs. Doyle. That's right. They're all like Mrs. Doyle. Go on, you will. Come on, have one. So anyway, and that's the importance, once again, of having that tribe. So this is why we built a community. We built a community of people who are choosing to change their relationship with alcohol, who are choosing to drink less, who are focused on optimal health, peak performance, building businesses, being successful, being good parents, being present, loving partners, building and leaving a legacy, right? This is what this community is trying to do. And in order to do that, they know they need to drink less alcohol. And when you join a community like that, when you're in the bar, right, or at the wedding, or you're surrounded by people who are drinking and somebody says to you, come on, just have one. It doesn't happen consciously. It happens subconsciously, that your subconscious checks your status. And it goes, are you changing your status? And because you belong to a community of people who are telling you that the status is higher by choosing not to drink, you go, no thanks, I don't want that drink right now. And that's the power of being amongst a community.
Oh my God. I love that, man. I love that, because a lot of guys will not have someone to turn to, right? And they don't have other people. And the only reason why it kind of worked for me was the fact that I kind of couldn't. And I was like away, right? And that was what was relevant to me. And it was only because, to be honest, man, I would actually say that if things didn't start progressing in a really good way, like, you know, I was getting the positive feedback of the business was growing, the podcast was growing, I was getting fitter and healthier. And I actually had a high performance coach at the same time, roughly when I gave up. It was actually non-related, but he also had quit alcohol too previously, which is probably subconscious. But I had a lot of positive feedback, basically, of things moving the right way. But what I'm trying to say here is that if I didn't have things that were working in the right way, maybe I could have ended up going back to some house event on a weekend and going to this event, going to that event, all the stuff I would have naturally have done and caught into that kind of loop. But the reason I'm saying this is because usually when you break away to that point, then you almost have the confidence to not go back. It could have been just my own anecdotal experience, right? But I think that's the difference when you are kind of out on your own. Now, what I would like to kind of get into is mainly around the economics of it. So this is fucking crazy. So alcohol is a $2 trillion industry of marketing, right? And that actually upsets me. And the reason why it upsets me is because a lot of times it's not marketed towards, you know, super older people. It's marketed at younger people coming through. And, you know, I'm based in Asia. I spent a lot of time in South America, and there's tobacco is legally advertised. So you could be in the middle of nowhere in South America and you will see cigarettes being advertised and kids 14, 15 smoking them. Now we look at that now and think, whoa, that's terrible. Oh, like with our Western views that, oh, that's terrible. But the same thing is happening for alcohol. You have the Champions League, you have the Heineken Cup, you have all this shit, right? That we don't realize that that's actually happening. And it's only until you get yourself out of it that you look at it. Now, what's your kind of view on that? Because like to most people, they just don't understand this. And I don't understand why. Do you want to launch a podcast for your business, but you don't know where to start? Remove the stress, pressure, and all the overwhelm that comes with it by working with Podcast University. If you're an ambitious individual who wants to build your influence online, grow your own podcast, and also stand out from the crowd, Podcast University is for you. We help you with the strategy, equipment, the content, your guests, everything you need to create a top-tier podcast. If you want to learn more, check out Podcast University and start your podcast journey today.
Yeah. Well, I think, so the first thing is alcohol. I know that we all think it's the best thing since sliced bread, but the truth is the game is up with alcohol, right? And it's going to take us quite a long time for society to change, but we now know it's one of the world's most harmful drugs. Professor David Nutt proved this, more harmful to both the people who take it and people are wider society around. And he proved it in multiple governments around Europe, wrote books about it, got kicked out of the UK government for proving it because they just didn't want to believe it. So alcohol is incredibly detrimental to your physical health, your mental health. You know, it attacks your stress coping mechanisms, making you be able to deal with less stress over time. If you're regularly consuming alcohol, it's having a significant impact on your mental health, your productivity, your physical health. That's just a fact. Okay. So it really isn't good for us, but it's incredibly prevalent in society. And so because of that, I don't think, you know, as we said, most people don't want to stop drinking. That's why we need to help people reduce and control their drinking. And by helping them reduce significantly, we're going to increase all those things. We're going to improve their mental health. We're going to improve their physical health. We're going to improve their productivity. We're going to improve their relationships, all of those wonderful things. So what was the question again? That's
my idea was around the marketing behind it. So mainly, and you talk about the matrix of alcohol, and I'm 100% in agreement. Like the system that is designed for profit by a government, driven to younger people, to indoctrinate them, to tell people that it's okay. Not just younger people. I mean, the boom right now is in females, 50 plus is the biggest issue of drinking. Alcohol consumption is still growing globally. Things happened during the pandemic. The licensing laws changed in America. They got it changed into an emergency
have it delivered. And so 24/7 access to alcohol consumption grew 20% in the US in that year. So, the alcohol consumption is not going away. When you look at the advertising, they've started to shift towards alcohol-free versions, but it's been like that way for a decade or more. In Sweden, they banned alcohol advertising, and yet alcohol sales did not decline. Why? Because people don't see the zero. They just see the brand. They just see Guinness. They just see Stella Artois. So that makes them go into the bar and order the alcohol drink that they want. Very clever alcohol industry. I think the big thing here is, in the alcohol industry, I think, unlike the tobacco industry, which paid for huge amounts of misinformation and research, funded misinformation and research, tried for decades to delay the truth that cigarettes were, highly toxic and a class 1 carcinogen, which alcohol is a class 1 carcinogen. They tried for a long time. We know the alcohol industry has been doing the same thing. It was proven that they were paying for research and studies to prove that moderation is healthy for you, all of those kind of things. So that being said, the way I think that we can see a shift here is that, unlike the tobacco industry, the alcohol industry has an opportunity to change the substance. And the thing is, why do we need a substance? Well, we need a substance because we live in the most stressful world we've ever lived in, and we need a way to take the edge off, and we don't want to deal with our shit. Most people don't. We want to run away with it. So we'd rather have a drug or a thing that we can take to deal with our shit rather than actually go and do the work. And so as long as society is that way angled, we're going to want something. And I think that we have an opportunity to create functional drinks, which we're seeing a huge rise of. I really believe that functional drinks is the future over just alcohol-free drinks. I think that we're seeing nootropic style drinks. We're seeing CBD drinks increasing significantly. Professor David Nutt, once again, has currently working on something called Alcarel, which is synthetic alcohol, which basically doesn't give you the hangover, something that he wants to prove and then license back to the alcohol industry. So I think we have an opportunity to move away from something that is completely carcinogenic and causes significant societal health issues. I mean, the cost to the government is enormous. You look at tax revenues versus cost to government, it doesn't make sense. It's like, this is insane. 52 billion cost to society in the UK, right? Versus, $1 billion or 2 billion of tax money. Why don't they just make this decision? Well, there's some interesting thoughts here, or conspiracy theorists that just say that.
I want to hear it. Tell me them all.
The biggest drinking population right now is successful, white, 40 plus year olds, and the vast majority of, forget ethnicity for a second, because there's lots of different drinking cultures, but 40 plus, the vast majority of those run our countries. They run our large organizations, and they run our countries, and they make our decisions. And so it's propagated for that main reason. So it's not going to go away immediately. A huge amount of money is involved in this thing. And it's still massively in demand by society. I mean, you could go tomorrow and put prohibition in place and ban alcohol. But I mean, imagine the outrage. And I don't think that's the way we do it. The reality of what we're saying here, if we pivot to the other side, is, look, all I'm saying to you is, you want to build your business this year. You want to improve your marriage. You want to be able to handle a higher level of stress. You want to be fitter, healthier, happier. You want to leave a legacy. You want to be a great parent, a great dad, a great mother. You want to be a great partner. In fact, what we really want is everything that you want, everything that you're truly aiming for in your life is actually being taken away by alcohol. It really is. It's not adding to any of those things. It's taking away from your productivity and your success in your business. You think it brings you business. It's a lie. I thought it was bringing me business. And then when I actually changed my relationship with alcohol, I doubled my business in the first year. So, that's the truth when you actually add in productivity, is that everything that you really want is on the other side of you changing your relationship with alcohol. And it's not going to cost you much to find out if that's bullshit or not. Like, why not just give it a shot? Why not just give it a shot? And if you suddenly see all the stats improve, if you see your health markers improve, your weight loss finally shakes off, niggling health issues disappear. I mean, there's a plethora of niggling health issues that evaporate from people who come through our program. Mental health issues evaporate because you've started to work on some of these things. You're like, wow, I wasn't anxious. I wasn't depressed. I was just drinking a depressant every day. I was just drinking something that creates anxiety every day. Wow, I wasn't unable to cope with my stress in my business. I was just drinking a very powerful tool at sabotaging my stress coping mechanisms. So that's on the other side of just giving it a shot of trying to change your relationship with alcohol.
It's all those subtle nuances that people think that it doesn't affect, right? Because the stress one is very, very interesting. The fact that your mental health or how you handle stress or how you handle situations. So giving a personal experience here, when I worked in tech and I drank, I could barely run a fucking team. Like I was all over the place, right? I was just very anxious going into calls and stuff. Now fast forward a few years, obviously I'm managing my own business, which is way bigger and a bigger scale and everything, at a fraction of the stress. I wake up, I walk, I write, I read, and then I start work. It's much more of a different framing. And now obviously you walk before you can run, right? But I think that detangling is quite interesting. Now, the societal pressures is something you always talk about. And you had that research paper with Sterling University. 58% of people feel regularly pressured into drinking. And that example you had was from nurses and people that work in those kind of conducive environments. Now, let's take a step back. My first role was in a big bank in Canary Wharf. And I'll remember two things I want to say. First day I walked in, and my background's in bodybuilding, right? I competed in bodybuilding in my early 20s, hyper competitive, very competitive, like individual sport, right? That's just kind of just the way my brain is kind of wired. I walked into this office and I remember distinctly everyone face down, overweight, massively overweight, very down, very like depressed, this grey room in Canary Wharf, and most people never got up to step outside. And that was like the culture of it. And people would actually look at me saying, hey, like, these young days of your early 20s where you've all this energy, you're going to go, like they're going to go, whatever. That was the first instance which sent all these tremors to my brain. The second instance was when I was later in that office that week and they said, well, we do like Thirsty Thursdays every Thursday. And I was like, every Thursday? And they said, yeah, every Thursday you finish at 5, you go downstairs onto the green in Canary Wharf and you drink basically until you go home at like 1 or 2 in the morning. And I was like, but wait, I have to go to the gym at 6 in the morning on Fridays. Like that was literally my response. And they were like, well, you're not doing that anymore. And I said, no, I'm not doing it. And I was the only person, I swear on my mother's life, who didn't do it. And I just think of that continuously because I see that happening. All of my friends who stayed in those careers are just caught in that perpetual loop. So I'd love to get your experience of like how that was like back in the early 2000s or whenever that was for you, 2010 maybe.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting coming out of that broking world and how saturated it was into there and how difficult it was. Like you've said, people were just like, why would you change your relationship with alcohol? Why do you want to stop drinking? That's the thing for people is it starts with a scratching in the back of the head. You're like, I think this alcohol thing is holding me back, right? And you're like, that's the little whisper. And then you start to listen to the whisper a little bit. And then you approach some friends and you're like, I'm thinking about drinking less alcohol. I'm thinking about stopping drinking. What the fuck? What are you talking about? Stop drinking. If I could drink all day, every day, I would, right? And you're like, oh, okay, well, maybe I'll just keep that to myself. It's a bit like coming out of the closet. You're like, Christ, I'm not doing that now. I just shut the door. Not that I've come out of the closet, but maybe this time. I'm kidding. I'm happily married with a lovely wife. And then I approached my boss, and my boss was like, "You are committing commercial suicide if you stop drinking." Yeah, well, that just means that the business requires you to drink. It's your job is to take people out and get them shit faced, and I was very good at that. But there'll be a lot of business owners who are like, "But Ruari, every time I go networking, the best relationships I build are after blah 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 blah. Having all these drinks." And yeah, I did build some good relationships like that. But when I changed up how I was entertaining, I built much better relationships. For an example. It's no problem if you guys want to drink. That's perfect. In the beginning, I hired 2 juniors and I brought them along with me to every single meeting. And I just said, they're drinking for me. Whatever I should be drinking, they'll drink it for me. And people thought this was absolutely hilarious. And they would get absolutely shit-faced. and I would be completely sober, and I'll be like, I'll be on the numbers for you tomorrow. Everything you say to me, I'm going to remember, and I'm going to be a far better broker for you the next day. And then on Friday, I was the only broker in the industry who wasn't hungover or depressed or still asleep in the disabled toilets, which is what used to happen to me. So, that was a massive game changer for me. And similarly, now what we are doing, helping people with control, is another evolution. I mean, over the last decade, I've helped hundreds of thousands of people stop drinking, take a break from drinking. But I saw the same thing happen again, is that people would stop, they could do a month, 6 months, a year, they would stop drinking. And then they'd go back, they'd have a drink, and they'd quickly be back to problematic drinking. And if that's you, right, if you're listening to this and you're like, well, I've kind of stopped before, but then I drink again, then I stop before and I drink again, just to wind that path forward, what you are psychologically doing is creating a worse problem with alcohol, right? And because you're going in search of abstinence as the solution, right? And that when you do drink, it causes problems. And so you're like, well, hang on a minute, my only solution is to be abstinent, which basically means you're heading towards that place of sobriety. Now, absolutely, right? Not drinking is the best version of yourself, 100%. But it's not realistic for me. I never wanted to not drink forever. I didn't want to be sober or anything like that. I knew that I wanted to go to a place where I could have one and leave it at that, or I could have a couple and leave it like that. And so for me, that sent me on a journey of trying to understand, what does drive compulsive behavior. I literally invested hundreds of thousands of pounds. Thankfully, for being an oil broker, I could do that kind of thing. I've worked with some of the top scientists around the world, neuroscientists from Yale University, Stanford, UCL. I worked with some of the top coaches, and I started to understand and see, we know from science what drives compulsive behavior. We know whether it's alcohol, drugs, caffeine, sugar, porn, gambling. Sounds like a great night out. I'm kidding. We know what drives compulsion. So why don't we start there with people? Instead of telling them that they have a problem or that they are this or that you have a disease, which is a fucking lie, excuse my French, why don't we just tell them that there are things in our lives that can drive the sense of compulsive behavior? We know what they are. We can change them. And if you change those things and you still have a very significant compulsion for the thing at the end of it, then yeah, maybe go down that road where you have to call yourself a name and be abstinent from it forever, because if you do drink it or touch it again, you'll die. And we launched that program 2 years ago. It's called Complete Control. It's designed specifically for business owners, execs, high achievers, and it's been completely revolutionary. It is amazing. So 100% of people come in to get control of their drinking. 93% of people after the program choose to carry on alcohol-free. A year later, 78% of people are still choosing to be alcohol-free, even though they wanted control before, which is amazing. And 22% are controlling their drinking. But beyond that, what people are saying is it's profoundly life-changing. And the reason why they say it's profoundly life-changing is because their life is what is driving the desire for alcohol, right? It has to be life-changing. So when we look at what drives it, let's just go through some of those. Number one, the source for the majority of us seeking to self-soothe, wow, try saying that 15 times, is our past experiences as a child. What happens is in our childhood, and this is from 0 through to predominantly 7 years old, is that you don't have a prefrontal cortex, that area behind your forehead that we use for rational decision-making, understanding the world, about making sense of the world. So when somebody shouts at us at a young age, we don't understand. We feel an intense emotion and we pack that down. And in our society, we are world class at packing down emotions. And those emotions get trapped inside of us. You don't really run around feeling emotions all the time. That's not what most of us do. In fact, we've been actively denying those emotions. What run around with is a very overreactive brain. And so you can't switch that brain off. And that's why you reach for alcohol. And, again, this is a really core part, is that when we start to change some of those things, the things that are of our past, our beliefs that drive our ego, it doesn't just change your relationship with alcohol. It changes how you show up in business. I mean, I had a guy who runs a $500 million turnover business say to me, Ruari, this has changed who I am, right? Which is a massive statement. He realized that some of his behavior was based on some shit somebody said to him when he was in a playground at 4 years old, and he's still carrying that crap around. Like, We need to let go of that. Just to touch quickly on the other ones before we go. But next is stress. Stress is a major driver of compulsive behavior. We use a device to help people monitor their stress. We monitor their central nervous system. We help them change their relationship to stress. So with stress, right, most people are not only handling their stress, but they're actively sabotaging their stress coping mechanisms. That's what alcohol does. That's what sleep deprivation does, which is a byproduct of drinking alcohol, right? So all of a sudden, now they're not able to handle high levels of stress, so they need alcohol. They need something to take the edge off. If not alcohol, it's cake or binge watching Netflix. Then we have things like our habits are absolutely key to driving our behavior. Relationships are a significant driver of compulsion. Meaning and purpose. So lots of people are completely misaligned with meaning and purpose. That was me in the world of finance. I didn't feel any meaning to it. So that's why I was drinking heavily, because I was really here to do good in the world. In fact, when I was 14 years old, I wrote a letter to Richard Branson. I said, I'm going to change the world one day and I'm looking forward to having lunch with you. I'd forgotten all about that because I got overpaid and drinking too much in London. Then I woke up and I was like, no, I'm here to help people. And so understanding what is driving the compulsion, and then going through a process, which is what we take people through on Complete Control, to change those drivers. That is how you end up with a take it or leave it relationship with alcohol.
Such a powerful message. My mind is just firing in so many different ways. You made such a good point about the kind of inner dialogue, and the way I always describe like entrepreneurship is like the journey of the self-discovery disguised in the path for profitability. So it's just, we're shooting for this number, we're shooting for this big goal, but you must change how you look at yourself inward before you have all the external beliefs, external changes. And that just comes with even the maturity in your business. When you made those investments into all the science-based research, there was a part of you that had to let go of like, okay, I'm no longer the broker bro anymore. I want to go do really good in the world. I need to change that inner dialogue. And I think having that identity shift is because compounded by alcohol. And what's funny is that people think, you described this really well, as the fact that, alcohol isn't the output or outcome, or no, it is the input. We need to fix the input factors that come into your brain, like why are you stressed? The underlying factors. And then what's interesting is that like you chart that back to the early days. So before we get into the early days, the control element for me, and I think was quite interesting with your podcast with Rich Roll as well, is that he was almost kind of a little bit confused with the control element, because his take on it was like, you need to be
Which is the 12-step way, exactly.
Or you need to be, or you're kind of still struggling. And not to say that I agree with him, but I'm saying from a logical perspective, to do it like a business, I believe the best way to grow a business is to be all in, right? To be all in your fitness, be all in your health, because that's when you have the commitment. But it's very interesting to observe the data you have gathered to say that some people who are not fully out of alcohol can still have a drink or two without going off the rails. Now, thinking through my Ibiza fucking brain when I was a kid, that was not me though. And it's interesting. Maybe that's environment, maybe that's the behavior, I don't know.
Look, I believe that I can help anyone have control of their relationship with alcohol. And that's an extremely unpopular belief, and gets a lot of people very, very angry and upset, because they are indoctrinated with this concept that they will always be that way. I'm just going to ask you this simple question. Where is there another example of that in life? Where is there another example that you will always be that way? There isn't. In fact, you might get diagnosed with something by a traditional doctor who says you will always be this way, but then show me countless people who've reversed it, or who have done something completely different and ignore it. Somebody was told they couldn't walk again, is walking. Somebody was told who was given 3 months to live, is 10 years later still existing. There is no other example of that. And so my thought here is addiction is significantly on the rise. And so look at all the things that are on the rise in our society that are driving it more. We're more stressed out than we ever were. We are, the way society is going is driving this thing. Those are things that we can change. We can change our environment. We can change our brains. We can change. And more so, let's say that the change process can't work for everyone. Well, that would be true. It's probably not going to work for everyone, right? Because there's not any examples of that in the world either, where one thing works for everyone. If the idea here is we're going to take people through a personal development journey that helps improves a large facet of many areas of their life. Okay, it helps them understand where they are on a scale of 1 to 10 with lots of different factors in their life. And then it takes them through a journey of improving those things. How can that journey be negative? How can that journey be anything apart from positive steps forward in anyone's life? Now, maybe we'll have a documentary one day where I work with some very severe addicts who are, I will always be an addict. I'm never going to be anything ever different. And we help them get to that place where they could take it or leave it. But I think that, that's like saying, can you train? I always talk about the physical version, right? If the physical version is trying to get somebody from mega obese, eating pizza every single day, like mega in bed, cannot move, massive obese, right? To running a 5K in under 20 minutes. And the 5K in under 20 minutes is the equivalent of mastering control of your relationship with alcohol. That's a long journey. And we don't even know if we could get there, right? Their bones might not put up with it. They may have done themselves too much damage. This is exactly the same thing. It is a personal development journey for you to get there. Similarly, and that is the divergence in the scientific community about whether addiction is a disease like that, that you could catch and that you have for the rest of your life, or is it something that we can help cure? And I firmly believe, along with a huge proportion of the scientific community, that addiction is something that we can solve. I want to believe that anyway. Don't you want to believe that? Don't you want to believe that we can heal people rather than telling them that they will be this way for the rest of their life? So similarly, just one more thing is that is not where my focus is. My focus is not on the people who would normally go to a detox or addiction center and are very, very severe. That's not where our focus is. Our focus is with everyone else who is regularly consuming alcohol, who feels like they're a little bit out of control, who would like to get control back in the fastest possible way. And that is, I think, a huge proportion of society, a huge proportion of drinkers. It could be the binge drinker, it could be the daily drinker, it could be you name it. And similarly, if I look at that journey of what we really do, again, the journey to get there is that we're going to improve your mental health, improve your physical health, improve your business, improve your relationships, like improve every area of your life. So what's to lose? What is to lose?
Are you an entrepreneur who wants to build your influence and authority online? You may have tried some of the hacks and tricks, but none of it has worked. And it makes sense. 90% of podcasts don't make it to episode 3. Of the 10% that are left, 90% of them don't make it to episode 20. That's where Voex comes in. Voex creates, manages, and grows your podcast for you on your behalf. If you've not been getting leads, not been growing consistently, you haven't found your tribe, and you don't know what to do, Voex is the answer. Don't just take our word for it. In the past couple of years, we've managed over 35 podcasts. We've also been able to generate over 55 million views with 500 episodes produced. And not only that, generating over $1 million for our clients in products, services, and sponsorships. So if you want to learn more about how you can build a great podcast and have it fully managed for you, schedule a call with me at Voex, and we will help you achieve your podcast goals. 100%. It's always like a step in the right direction. And I would have given the perfect example for you as an anecdote for diet, right? Because, as a bodybuilder, I was on a bodybuilding diet for so many years. Yes, you can be dialed in 100% of the time, but you can still eat off-plan meals. You can go out for your dinner, you can go out for a drink with your wife, or you can go for food with your wife, and you can eat meals outside of your meal plan and still achieve the goal. But it's because for 98% of the time you're dialed in, or 90% of the time, or 85% of the time, or 80-20, right? It's like we're moving in the right direction. Now, you talked about time, and time is something that I extremely analyze very closely. It's something that I always speak about in the podcast. You could always date it back with older shows, and my analysis of time is the actions you make today. So everything is a cause and effect under the variable of time, but we can't turn time into a fixed variable. What that means is that if I make an impact today, if I do something today, we don't know when it'll have an impact. So if I go and have a beer today, no impact. If I go out and have a beer tomorrow, no impact. If I keep doing it for a week, I'll have the impact T plus 7 to 14 days, right? That's something that's tangible. Same with any type of like devices, like watching porn, drugs, so on and so forth. But it has an asymmetrical return. It has a negative return, and it also has the opposite positive return if it's a good habit, like going to the gym, cycling, like I know that you're a fan of, or eating, let's say. So you have the impact 6, 12, 18 months from now. And the perfect example is like with a business, right? If you're learning something, you go into a program, the money doesn't pop up like this. But I think most people don't recognize that we're trying to play the long game, right? So how do you evaluate time in terms of alcohol and in terms of taking a break from alcohol to yield the benefit of being off alcohol?
Yeah, exactly. So if I look at our complete control program as an example, is the vast majority of it is really diagnosis and awareness. So we use these amazing tools, multiple bits of technology. We remotely monitor you. We help you see in data and evidence what is driving the compulsive behavior. The purpose of that journey is for you to see with exact clarity what is driving compulsion in your life, whether it's alcohol or any other compulsion, right? Now, when you go through that journey and you start making those changes, the reality is you're going to pick up a few bits and pieces. It's a bit more intensive than reading a book, right? You've kind of got those layers of how much you pick up a book, you probably pick up 1% or 2% of it at best, right? Let's just take this journey differently. Let's say that the journey is to learn Kung Fu, okay? And you're like, I really want to be good at Kung Fu. In fact, I want to become a master at Kung Fu. And so you go, okay, I'm going to go on an 8-week intensive Kung Fu program. So you go and you learn with these great masters and you do 8 weeks of intensity. And that's just like learning about your compulsion, what drives the behavior, how you operate as a human being, all the various areas of your life that doing, right, is learning these skills. At the end of that program, you probably have some good skills in Kung Fu. And then some people are like, okay, yeah, I'm just going to go and figure this out on my own now. I'm just going to try and, go out there and do it. Would you do that if it was like Kung Fu? Or would you go, no, I really want to stay with these masters and get to that place in the fastest possible time? Because that's what we're talking about. The other version is to just say, do you know what? I think I might try and learn Kung Fu. I'm going to buy some books on Kung Fu. And so you start reading a book. How far is that going to get you? Then you take it up one more level and you think, oh, look, some YouTube videos. How long is that going to take you? Right? And this is exactly the same thing about coming on an intensive program, is you want to be able to master your relationship with alcohol, but you want to be able to change these things in a significant way. Well, when you bring in the experts like us and you go into an intensive program like that, you're going to be so much further ahead in a shorter period of time than you are just trying to figure all this out on your own. It's not impossible, right? I did it without a program, but it took me a decade. It took me a long, long, long time before I, maybe a little bit less than that. No, about a decade, because it was 2 years before I came through. Similarly with this, so as an example on the program, we do talk about control all the time. And then during the program, we help people see that ultimately the ultimate control will always be not drinking. The best place to have your relationship with alcohol is either not drinking, or the one level up is that mostly you don't drink, but occasionally you choose to have a drink, right? Where it is controlled. And that's the optimal place to be. If you are regularly consuming alcohol every week, then it's causing you significant physical and mental health. It's holding you back in so many ways. Like, you just need to stop that, go back to a place where it is more on the rarer occasion. In saying that, going on this journey is that whilst we have learned that abstinence does not equal control, lots of people stop drinking and then find out they go back to problematic drinking. Absolutely, a period of abstinence gives you all the tools you need, right? Clarity, energy, focus, productivity, to do the work to get control. The question mark is what is the work? And that's really why we created Complete Control. What is the work? Now, do you think that you would ever go back to drinking, or are you done forever now?
So this is the thing. This is a really good point to make. So when people ask me about what you should do when you finish alcohol, my approach to this is to have goals so big that's a goal that's bigger than the session, bigger than going and having a party. So for me, it was initially leaving the tech world. So I knew that me as a C student from Ireland, I wasn't going to be able to build like a 7-figure business like this. I need to make sacrifices. So it was one, get myself out of my tech role. Then it was build a business and not burn it to the ground. And now where we're at is like get to 7 figures and then potentially get to 8 figures a year, maybe a year. And then same with the fitness was like, I remember I was like getting a lot bigger. So I was like get up to 85 kilos and get down to 75 kilos. So I'm putting in these interim steps. And as a result, I don't really want to go, like I don't want to go back to alcohol. I've no desire, no inkling, no, what's the word I'm trying to use?
No inkling. You nailed it.
Yeah, no demand,
desire.
basically, right? No desire. And then what's interesting, right, is when I see something that comes up that could like spike my curiosity. So I'm in Bali right now. There's a beautiful beach bar that gets the best DJs in the world that come in. I love music. I've always loved music. Whenever I see like a name come in of a DJ come in, I'm like, oh, that would be fun. Well, I got to clean up the CRM on Saturday morning. I want to train on Saturday morning. I want to go on a bike ride and see it on Sunday morning. So I put in these things that are just way more enjoyable for me. And then a lot of my friends are just entrepreneurs anyway. So I don't always join them on this, but they might do like 12-hour hikes, 14-hour hikes. And I might join them once a quarter or whatever, because it's a lot, right? It's a lot. But that's kind of like the alternatives. Now, what I would say is when I was in Ireland 2022 for Christmas, like what else is there to do, right? We met up with people, they were drinking, that's all there is to do. Now, I didn't drink, but I could just see myself in that spiral in terms of like, I need to think about control, I need to think about what I could do here. But yeah, like, luckily I have people around me that are awesome, even my family and stuff. I tried to actually bring this information to them because they're just ordinary people, right? I don't feel that. It's weird.
I think, that's fantastic. Well done. It's the perfect place to be in at the end of the day. It's a really, really shit drug, and it's just so prevalent in society. For me, I still wanted to go and do the craziness. And for a long time, I did all the stag do's and, I would outlast everyone. I'd be there longer. I'd be there harder, and I wouldn't touch alcohol or drugs because I needed to still be that party guy. I remember buying a bottle of Jägermeister on the plane or for the plane and then forcing everyone to get absolutely trashed. I wasn't drinking, but they loved it, right? Because that's what stag do's are all about. So I still wanted to be that person. When it comes to going to the occasional thing like that, again, I think, the downside and the impact of alcohol is so great. And I think we're going to have a drugs revolution. We don't necessarily need to get onto that into this conversation here, but if you listen to Professor David Nutt, the drug science, there are far better substances. You might say, well, why do you need anything? Well, sometimes it's fun to let go and do all those things. And we talked about that in this society before. And I think that there will be a shift in things like that, or rather a significant shift going forward. Even so, people still, like we touched on earlier, people still want to take the edge off after a week, etc. So yeah, I think that being said, really, when we go all in on loving all of the versions of ourselves without alcohol, right? So you kind of make it a journey of saying, I want to create a version of myself that absolutely loves life without alcohol featured in it. And I'm going to go on that journey of discovery to say, well, what would it be at this moment? Well, what would I do here? How would I behave in this? Lots of people find out that actually they're introverted. They've been using alcohol to be extroverted. Introverts don't want to be out till 4:00 in the morning. They're done at 10. So fucking leave at 10. Book the taxi. That's you done. Thank you very much. So discover who you are, not drinking alcohol. Create that version of yourself and make it somebody that you love. If you go through that journey and you're like, I just don't love that, I just need it, then there's clearly stuff in your life that needs to change. And you touched on it earlier, having bigger goals, bigger dreams, having an impact in the world, doing the things that you love. Lots of people drink because they're bored. Lots of people drink because they're lonely. Lots of people drink because they're leading lives that they don't really want in their heart to leave. And I think that when you get clear on vision, purpose, meaning, who you are and how you want to show up in the world, it's much easier to drink less or not at all.
Well, it's cope, right? And especially when you're in that kind of environment whereby it's raining 9 months of the year, you physically can't go outside. Like I'm in Asia now, it's 30 to 35 degrees every day. So I'll wake up, I'll work, I'll go to the gym, I'll go to the beach, bring the dogs for a walk. I'm kind of in this like outdoorsy environment, so it's more conducive towards like activity. And therefore, if I was hungover, I'd be like, oh, I can't walk on the beach today. I'm tired. My heart is pumping. Like I used to smoke as well when I was a kid, just like, party smoking. And I was like, that would take an impact basically. And I remember that as well when I was younger, right? But it's been able to move away from that and almost create like your own world, right? Create your own identity. So I think it is that kind of coping mechanism. You made a really good point about fulfillment and purpose. So let's take a step back. So when I was in the beginning of COVID, and when everything shit hit the fan, I'd done a bunch of like small businesses in the past. They didn't do much, right? But they were my exploration. I tried to build a few apps and went nowhere. But I had a look at myself and I was like, what is it that I'm actually searching for? Which was actually the genesis of the podcast, which was like, I want to connect to people. I want to learn more. I know nothing about this world. And to this day, I still know very little. But my whole idea was I read Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning, which put me on the path of like, there's chosen suffering and there's beauty in everything basically, but there's beauty in that process, which is what set me down this path. I think that was a catalyst for me to step away, because when I was trying to like level up other aspects of my life, it was alcohol that was holding me back. But I just feel like that a lot of people don't have those conversations with themselves. And the only reason why I have is because from the very beginning, 210 episodes ago, I was meeting people that were like you, right? From the very beginning. And I was like, why am I not there apart from being 23 years old? One of the reasons why I wasn't there was just because I wasn't doing the other work. And yeah, man, it just took so many years of that like small, subtle scratchiness at the back of my mind to realize that, okay, you need to do something else, right?
Totally. Yeah, I'm there. Let me call myself the subconscious squirrel, because I want to be the noise in the back of people's heads. Oh, what a horrible thought. I want to be the one exacerbating that scratch, and really getting people to see, because I wasn't doing the math. You know, I wasn't doing the math that my relationship in tatters was because of alcohol, that my physical health that wasn't great, you know, overweight, IBS, psoriasis, right, all of these things, those niggling health issues, I didn't put them down to alcohol. I didn't put down me walking into work crying in the morning because I just didn't know why I was uncontrollably crying. I didn't put that down to alcohol. And the reality is, yes, it was alcohol, but it was actually the things underlying it that were driving it. You know, for instance, like we've touched on, right? I was in a job I didn't feel meaning and purpose for. I had a relationship which was quite broken. I wasn't aligned to meaning and purpose. I was working in a windowless office and commuting by tube. All of those things. I wasn't really exercising. So that's what was ultimately driving it. And yeah, it's a game changer when somebody realizes that. So I think the easiest way to reach people, like we've said before, is, you know, you're trying to build your business. You know, maybe this is the best investment your business could make this year. You know, maybe coming on this journey to change your relationship with alcohol is the thing that doubles your business or gives you that extra 20% of productivity, energy, focus, clarity, purpose, all of those things, to make the difference this year. And what if I'm right? You know, you're trying so hard, and building a business is fucking hard. It takes everything from us and more. And the other thing I always say is alcohol is a significant depressant, right? It's a very, very powerful depressant. When is the time to drink a depressant? Is it like when you're already depressed and stressed out your mind and struggling with the business and unable to cope? Is it fuck? Right? Why would you add that in? All it's going to do is send you into free fall. So the only time is just after ringing the New York Stock Exchange bell, right? And when your wife has just messaged you saying, I'm more in love with you than you ever were, and you've got a post-it note from your daughter saying, Daddy, you're my hero. That's when you should have a drink, right? Because you're crushing life. Not when the chips are down and you're low and struggling because it's just making things worse.
Have you ever had any experience with psychedelics?
Oh yeah, tons, all of them. In fact, we'll be using psychedelics on the programs we use very, very soon. So I think psychedelic therapy is the future for trauma, addiction, all of those things. Yeah, I mean, I did a mushroom ceremony myself just 2 days ago. 2 days ago.
Amazing. So what specifically have you looked at, like ketamine, or have you just looked
ketamine
at
therapy? Ketamine therapy is very, very good. Discovered significant shame from my past through ketamine therapy. And then, you know, swam in the shame. It's like another level. It's amazing. I've done decades of therapy sitting around talking about life, and I never really discovered or shifted these things in my past until I was doing psychedelic therapy. I've done ayahuasca, I've done heavy dosage LSD and MDMA, done multiple sessions with MDMA alone, done couples therapy with MDMA.
Sorry, was that under like a study or like in a medical place, or was it just
No,
personal?
but it is with a clinical team. So I've always done it professionally as therapy, and I think, well, not always. I did a couple of more chilled out ceremony style, with the hippie style therapy, and it's nowhere near as impactful as doing it professionally with a trained therapist, who comes from a clinical background along with a GP, which is what I was doing it with before. So, but I think that it is absolutely the future for people helping to heal from past experiences and shift past trauma, which is such a major driver of compulsive behavior.
How is that managed through like a center? So let's say if it's ketamine, it's intravenous or whatever the process is. How do they walk you through that process?
Well, when I did IV, I did it at the German hospital here in Mallorca, and they do it on an IV drip. You do about 4 psychotherapy sessions of 2 hours beforehand, and then when I did it once, I actually had some EMDR or brain imaging stuff just to see what was going on with my brain at the time. And then they guide you through. It's about 4 hours of a session on the drip. And I was talking away to the therapist at the same time while I was in there. She was trying to communicate with me and steer me through the woods. It's amazing. So ketamine therapy is completely legal in the UK now. MDMA therapy will be legal in the next 6 months. MDMA, we're talking about ecstasy, guys, and the war on drugs. I mean, shut up. MDMA is a medicine. It was designed as a medicine. It should be in a pharmaceutical. It should be in a pharmacy behind, and I think that's what I was hinting at this change in drugs is I think, MDMA can help people significantly. Certainly should be a phenomenal tool for couples counseling, marriage counseling, which is what it was used for in the 60s, right? And then you look at people going and having one psilocybin experience and not touching alcohol again. Or you look at people doing one iboga or ibogaine experience and never being an addict again. It's really amazing, I think, what's happening with the psychedelic work. And then there's quite a lot of work happening with technology too. So I'm interested in the VR space where they're using lights, image, sounds to create psychedelic experiences in the brain. So there's a lot of research going into that. And we actually use and test a lot of technology. So doing a lot of testing now with vagus nerve, which is the vagus nerve connects the brain and the body. And it's how we sort of help regulate our central nervous system, our sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous systems. And trauma and our past experiences can be very impactful on our central nervous system. So that's why doing vagal toning and things like that can help us deal with trauma. There's amazing bodies of research that shows your likelihood to get complicated grief, which, by the way, we are all going to grieve at some point. And your likelihood of having complicated grief is dictated by vagal tone. And you can increase vagal tone through breath work. I think there's a revolution over the next 10 years with technology, with AI, with some of these tools that we're going to be able to help people significantly. And that's what I'm building here. We're a preventative health company. Okay, sure. People come in the door because they want to change their relationship with alcohol. But I help people prevent illness, mental health disorders, all sorts of diseases. I've had a lady who came into the program and reversed her multiple sclerosis diagnosis within 3 months of coming through the program. So she was positive. Then the doctor told her she needs to sort out her diet. She came on our program a month after being diagnosed. And then 3 months after the program, there were no signs of multiple sclerosis, reversed. So
that's super interesting. It's very interesting to see about UK being a bit forward with that. I did not expect the UK to be moving forward with like ketamine, MDMA, because I know it's in America, right? And my partner's is American, so I'm familiar with this process.
Australia is fully open, yeah. Australia is MDMA, psilocybin. These are now available for different therapies.
And we talked about the intangible benefits, but also the asymmetrical returns of health, right? When you change one variable, it continues on. I want to get your thoughts on diet because, again, how I describe this, right, is like for me, it was the domino effect positively. It was that when I wanted to improve my fitness, I got rid of alcohol, and then I improved my muscle density, I improved my sleep. Bro, I forgot to mention you. I used to sleep like 4 hours a night. genuinely. 4 to 5 hours a night, every night, not even when I'm just out. And now my sleep is up to 9 hours a night. And let me tell you how. So I was traditional bodybuilding diet, very high carb, big, whatever, like that was the whole idea. And only recently, because I want to get more out of my business, I swapped to a practically no carb diet. So it's only animal-based and fruit. So just fruit, and obviously in Asia, you use the best quality fruit, right? So as much fruit as I want, which is kind of driven more by the brain, right? So if I needed like more carbs, I'll have like a mango or a watermelon or a banana, but mainly just red meat and avocado, basically, and eggs, pastured eggs, so, and grass-fed food. So, and as a result, the impact on my sleep has been wild. I'm intermittent fasting for 16 hours naturally without any forced effort, and I'm sleeping for up to 8-9 hours a night. What's your take on diet, and especially with alcohol?
Part. And we help people with diet. People are different, and so I think going lower carb can definitely be helpful. I'm predominantly carnivore, so just like you, I have a similar sort of carnivore/fruit diet. It was revolutionary for me, my brain. I'm ADHD, so it calmed all of that exacerbating down. It's really interesting. You talk about that level of sleep deprivation. Sleep deprivation masks itself as ADHD. So people who have sleep deprivation then end up getting an ADHD diagnosis, but they rate their sleep deprivation.
But I could be diagnosed as ADHD. I didn't mean to interrupt you, but the way we're talking, we seem very similar people.
No, I mean, I picked that up straight away, and I'm an ambassador for ADHD UK, so you can go there and take the test, and they'll tell you. But
I think I need it.
Yeah. So diet is a huge factor. I mean, look at what's happening in America. It's just nuts, and the shit that they put on our food. So I think this is another thing that needs to have a bit of a revolution is our food and how we're feeding ourselves. So yeah, a huge part.
So what is it you're doing specifically so on the food and like supplementation side?
Yeah, I mean, again, we can recommend different supplements to help people calm their central nervous system, heal their liver. Things like milk thistle was very good for that. Ashwagandha, 30% reduction in cortisol over 30 days in various studies. So ashwagandha is very helpful for people calming down their central nervous system. Lots of B vitamins. They believe that a significant portion of craving actually comes from a deficiency in B vitamins. So B vitamins can be very helpful. And then when you start looking at different areas for people, looking at whether sleep is an issue or, all of these different factors, it will depend on supplementation. And then again, our initial recommendation for people is to go to a whole food, based diet or predominantly paleo style diet, and try and recommend some people to consider looking at carnivore, which is controversial, I know, but at the end of the day, if you try something and it has a very, very significant impact on your physical and mental health, then you've got an answer. And a lot of people go across to carnivore and they find all sorts of things evaporate. So
100%. It's the focus is the biggest thing, right? You made a good point about the vitamins. That is a deficiency. You could go a layer deeper and say it's a mineral deficiency. David Asprey always talks about that it's actually not vitamin, it's mineral first and then vitamin. And the knock-on effect is where these like triggers in your brain are coming from effectively, which is like, I need sugar, I need food, I need carbs, I need this, right? It's at the mineral level. But, and like, to be honest, we could probably go for 4 hours, to be honest, because of that fact, right? But we'll leave it for our next episode because I know we're remote right now and to do it again. But yeah, this has been huge. It's a fantastic episode. I really appreciate your time with this. There's a lot more to get into it, but anything we can help you with in the future as well. And there's a few shows I'm writing notes on as well that I can recommend you to initially on this stuff that would be great for you to appear on. But yeah, just want to say a big thank you again and really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me on. And yeah, check us out at oneyearnobeer.com. There's all sorts of digital courses, programs, community. The game changer for business owners, which is having a massive, profound impact on people's lives, is the Complete Control program. And you'll see that on the program there. And then you can find me on all the usual socials, OYMB for the company everywhere, 1 Year No Beer, OYMB, or I'm Ruari Fairbairns on most things, pretty active on Instagram. Feel free to add me and send me a ping. Happy to help or have a chat, leave some audio notes, help anyone out there. Just reach out.
Awesome. Thank you so much, man.